landing crew, and welcome to today's video. If you do not know me, my name is Stephanie. I have 6 kids altogether. I have had 4 children that are developmentally behind, so this is not my first rodeo at all. And if you guys hear other like noises and stuff, I'm sorry. Real life is happening here. But in today's video, we're going to talk about how to get an autism diagnosis, how to get into early intervention, what happens and what you should do if you're encountering a forever long wait for an autism evaluation. And at the very end, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between an educational autism diagnosis and a medical diagnosis, because they're different. That can get confusing in itself. So let's get going. First things first, you do not have to have an autism diagnosis to address certain needs that your child has. So they can get occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech therapy, feeding therapy. They can get all of those without actually having a piece of paper saying that your child is autistic, because not everyone that needs OT, PT, speech, feeding therapy have autism. But more importantly, not only do you not have to have an autism diagnosis for those services, you also don't have to have an autism diagnosis to start early intervention. Early intervention is so important. I'm probably going to say it a million times in this video, but it is so important. Before even starting the process for an autism evaluation, I would go ahead and get them into early intervention. Sometimes with the autism evaluations, you can encounter up to 18 months. It's really important for your child not to miss out on those crucial months or years that they could be getting the therapies that they need without actually having that piece of paper. If your child is over the age of 3 and delayed, a lot of states will then kind of transfer them into like a special needs pre-K, and that's usually taken over by the school district and things like that. You're probably asking yourself, okay, you're talking about early intervention, but how do I get early intervention? A lot of times we talk about things and we really don't explain to parents like how you start this process. And as I said before, it's very overwhelming. So how I did it, and again, I've lived in 3 different areas technically, because I lived in the Jacksonville area, the Clearwater area, and now in Colorado. It was the same for all of them. All you have to do is just go to google.com, type in early intervention and your county and state. If you do not live in America, then I would probably just type in the area of whatever country you're in and see kind of what pops up. Give them a call. Explain that you're concerned about your child's development, and they should refer you for the next steps. Sometimes early intervention can be scary, just taking that first step, admitting that you may not have a typical child. So I completely get that. All they're going to do is they're going to evaluate your child's overall development. And then if your child falls below in 1 or more areas, then usually that qualifies them for services. And that again gets the ball rolling while you're waiting on that autism evaluation. Something for you guys to know is if your child has a genetic abnormality or some other existing condition, a lot of states will automatically make them eligible even if they're not at the age of 1. Usually if your child is under the age of 1, it's really hard to qualify for early intervention just because so little is expected of them. But if they have something like a genetic abnormality, cerebral palsy, or they were premature, there's so many different conditions and it varies state to state that a lot of times will just cut through the red tape. Now that that is out of the way, let's move on to how to get an autism diagnosis. Now, just because your child gets evaluated does not mean they're going to get a diagnosis, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, but autism traits can also mirror other disorders as well. Sometimes we think, oh yeah, our child's definitely autistic, or maybe we think that they're not. We think something else is going on and we find out it is in fact autism. But this is a great way to get the ball rolling and to kind of, again, make sure that your child is going to get the best help and live their best life. And if you don't know, the process for an autism evaluation is probably not like anything else you've experienced. It's pretty lengthy. It's usually split up into 3 to 4 different appointments. The first appointment is usually a parent intake. They ask you a bunch of questions about your kid for hours and hours. And then the next 2 appointments, they usually are evaluating your child, how they react to you, how they react to others. And there's different like little assessments and tests that they run to kind of test their skills in 3 different areas: communication, repetitive stereotypical behavior, which is like stems, lining things up, things like that, and also their social skills as well. You have to have so many traits in each category in order to qualify for an autism diagnosis through the DSM criteria. So for some families, getting this autism evaluation is going to be really easy and you might be very jealous of them. That is not our story. If you know us, you know that we had to fight and fight and fight to finally get Noah diagnosed with autism. So everyone, regardless what your journey is going to look like to that evaluation or diagnosis, it's all going to basically start the same. You're probably going to go to your pediatrician and you're going to express a concern about your child's development. And then you will vocally ask for referral for an autism evaluation. Not all doctors are going to automatically be like, okay, yeah, let's get that done. So sometimes you have to ask, you have to be that advocate. Don't wait until the doctors then deem it necessary to do it. Some doctors are super proactive. We've been very lucky these last couple of years. We've had a lot of proactive doctors and we've been so thankful for that. But I feel like they're proactive because of Noah, because our oldest is diagnosed on the spectrum. Not every doctor is going to be like that and you can't expect them to be. At the end of the day, you're your child's advocate. So ask them, say something. Insurance companies are getting so picky now. So it's so important for you to go the correct way about getting the autism diagnosis. It's really important for you to have a comprehensive assessment. And at the end of the day, you have a diagnosis report. For us, again, we went through a different way with Noah the first time and we didn't have that diagnosis report. We just had this note from the doctor that said that Noah was diagnosed with autism, and we carried that for years and years and years without any issues, and then suddenly there were issues. But I don't want anyone to go through what we had to go through. So after you get the referral for an autism evaluation, at that point a clinic or a children's hospital will reach out to you. The children's hospital is probably the most common way that people go about getting an autism evaluation, because usually it's done through a developmental pediatrician. A developmental pediatrician isn't just going to evaluate your child for autism. They're going to look at the entire picture, because again, as I said, sometimes more than just autism can be going on. Maybe it's not autism, maybe it's something else, and they'll be able to kind of evaluate and go from there. The problem is the waiting list though, and that's why a lot of times people go other routes, because the waiting list is so excessive. So if you're encountering years before being able to reach that evaluation, that was our story in Florida. They told us that it was going to be 2 to 3 years before they would be able to schedule for the evaluation. Like there was a waiting list for the waiting list and it was extremely long and we were really frustrated. So your other option is to find another clinic, another psychologist that does the evaluations but also accept your insurance. That can sometimes be a little bit tricky where you live. In Florida, that was a huge hang up for us. Here we have a lot of options in Colorado, thankfully, because we are getting our 4-year-old reevaluated. He was diagnosed as borderline autistic and she wasn't 100% sure. So she told us like, hey, in a year or so, get him reevaluated. So that's what we're doing. Thankfully for us, there's a special needs clinic here who does the autism evaluations, and we're going to be starting at the end of next month. So it's very quick. But I know a lot of states don't have that story, and just trying to get your child in for the evaluation is so frustrating. And it's also hard because you're emotionally and mentally going through a lot. Like you just want an answer. Like, is my child special needs or not? Do they have autism? Do they not? This was the issue we had with our 3 boys when we lived in Florida. No one would accept our insurance. Every place we called that would accept our insurance had waiting lists that was so long. It was almost laughable if it wasn't the fact that it was like part of my kid's future, you know? We ended up having to pay out of pocket. So if you are financially able to and you're reaching these really long waiting lists, that's something I would encourage you to do if you are able to. I know everyone can't. The evaluations themselves are pretty pricey. They're $1,200 to $3,000. So not everyone obviously can have the financial capability to do it. However, if you can, it definitely can help. We did pay out of pocket for all 3 boys, which sucked. It wasn't fun. But for us, that beats waiting 2 to 3 years in order to get those diagnoses for the kids. If I would have known what I know now, we could have just waited and did it here. But then we could have missed crucial time of the boys being able to get the services that they need. So I have no regrets about it. Some places will also offer like payment arrangements, payment plans, let you slowly pay it out, like space the appointments out and then split it up that way. So just talk to them and see. A lot of them are very understanding. If you're going with a good clinic, which you should, they want to help your child. Like that's what they're there for. I know the doctor that evaluated my boys when I contacted her, she was so sweet and so understanding, and she actually gave us a discount on them. And she's just been an amazing, amazing person, and she changed our boy's life, and I will never be able to tell her thank you enough, because had we gone with anyone else, I don't know when we would have been able to do it. So to summarize what I just said, you're gonna get a referral from a pediatrician. You're then going to either get the evaluation scheduled through the children's hospital or a clinic, or you can pay out of pocket. And those are kind of the best ways to start the process. Now, the autism evaluation itself is pretty lengthy, pretty exhausting, mentally, emotionally, all of that. This is the best way to kind of get you on that pathway if you are concerned that your child's developmental delay is more than just a delay and that there's something else going on. There's something wrong with getting an evaluation. For me, I would rather know than not know kind of thing. It's why we're getting Alexander reevaluated, because if he does have autism, then I want him to have the correct label. But if he doesn't have autism, I don't want him to carry around that label falsely either. So we just kind of want an answer once and for all, like, does he have autism or does he not? Most of all, guys, don't forget, you are your child's best advocate. No one else is going to fight for them like you will. So be your child's voice. Don't take no for an answer. Don't wait until other people bring up the issue. I know it's scary. I know it's so scary to even remotely admit to yourself that something else might be going on, more and less like say it out loud to a professional. But in the end, you getting your child early intervention can change their life forever. Another great idea is to also join a local Facebook group for special needs in your area. They will be the ones that can provide to you, oh yeah, this is a good place to go, or this is where I went, and things like that. They're very, very, very helpful, and they've helped us so much living in this area. All right, so before ending the video, I'm going to talk to you guys about the difference between an educational and medical diagnosis. So medical diagnosis is when you go to a clinic, hospital, pediatrician, all of that. They evaluate your child as a whole, how they act at school, at home, just overall. They're looking at the overall picture of your child from morning to night. So that's called a medical diagnosis. Now, some schools can definitely use that if it's signed by a licensed physician. So they have this medical diagnosis, you go to sign them up for school, and then the school says, okay, well, we're gonna need to do our own ASD evaluation. And you're like, but he's autistic. Like, I have this paper saying he has autism. And they're like, well, we have to do our own. Some schools will, again, accept the autism diagnosis, and it will be put under other medical. I've heard this come from a million different ways for a million different things, but the school never cared if I had a diagnosis for Noah outside of the school. They didn't care when I had a diagnosis for Lex outside the school. They have to do their own evaluations. When they look and do the educational evaluation for ASD, they're looking for things that would prohibit them learning, things that would be in the school time. So it is not uncommon for a child to have a medical diagnosis of autism, especially if they're higher functioning, but they don't meet the criteria for school. For whatever reason, maybe they act like a complete angel when they're there and there's no problem areas and everything's fine. So at that point, it's not a thing. That doesn't mean your child's not autistic. That just means they don't have enough behaviors or traits displayed in the school setting in order to get that label. It's kind of basically a watered down version of the medical evaluation. If you have to redo the ASD evaluation, don't feel like they're saying that your child isn't autistic or they're questioning the fact that he's autistic. They are not. Liam was diagnosed when he was 18 months old, moderate to severe. The older Liam gets, the more obvious, it's like super clear he's definitely autistic. There's no doubt about that in anyone's mind. However, we're going to start the process in September to get him into special needs pre-K, and they're gonna have to do an ASD evaluation, and that's just how it is, and that's fine. They can do what they need to do. It is frustrating. You're gonna have to do evaluations and assessments so much in school, and it's exhausting mentally, physically, all of that. Our kids don't enjoy it, but it's just a part of making sure that when they're in that school setting, they're getting the best help they possibly can. But that is it, guys. If you would like for me to do any other special needs or autism or anything like that videos, leave it in the comments below, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
Where you move make me blind. You will always be there. There's no doubt in my mind.